Yeah, sure.
All right, I'll start the stream. Okay, so yeah, first of all, thanks for coming, Garvita, and thanks for coming, everyone. Uh, and if you guys don't know who Garvita is, she has been featured in Forbes 30 and the 30 list. She works at FamPay currently, and yeah, and she's a waterpreneur, so she works in the water space and conservation of it and all of that. So yeah, over to you, Garvita. You're not audible. Is she audible to you guys?
Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Now you are.
Sorry, I was saying my laptop conked out for a second, so I missed the entire introduction. But I caught you on. Over to you.
Oh damn. Cool. Maybe you can introduce yourself once again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Guys, it's so lovely to be here, and thanks to everyone for joining. It was very exciting to kind of connect with all of you. I'm Garvita, and I've been a waterpreneur now for 6 years. Um, it's been a very exciting journey. I started out as an entrepreneur when I was just 15 years old. So incredibly humbling at the same time. And I'm sort of excited to share my journey with all of you and, talk a little bit more about what I've done. But, before starting out, I see the chat is super active. So what I'm going to ask all of you to do is maybe, I thought I could start with a question. And I also see 2 hands raised. So are we taking questions now or later?
We can take questions later. So what will happen is Garvita will speak for about 20-25 minutes, and then we can take questions from you guys. Sounds good?
Yeah, sure. So I thought, I would start with the question. Can you guys just sort of reflect and within like a few seconds, right? Just type out the first number that comes to your head. How much water do you think is consumed in manufacturing a pair of jeans? I'm going to head over to the chat. Okay, so some other, okay, 10 liters, 20 liters, 100 liters, 90. Just guys, the first number that comes to your head. Don't think too much. 40, 1,000, 100, 150, 150. Okay, this is fun. 7 liters. I'm going to skip that 5 million number. It's more than that, 6 million. Can you guys hear me clearly?
For me, it is clear.
Okay.
Even for others.
Okay, great. No, okay, so before you guys jump to Google, the number is almost 2,000 liters of water just to manufacture a pair of jeans. And so there's a lot of ways in which we're consuming water today that we don't realize, but is actually being used in different scenarios. So I'll take you guys a little bit through my journey. I was in school. When I was in school, about 15 years old, which was around the time you're in 10th, 11th grade. I came across, I was reading a lot about the issues that were occurring in our environment, and specifically around farmers taking their lives due to the lack of access to water, and women and girls walking miles just to get a glass of water that we get without even moving a finger most often. And amidst this information, I came across this number that said that 14 million liters of water gets wasted every year simply in the water that we leave behind in glasses at restaurants. And that to me was an extreme shocker, because I realized that little bit that you were leaving behind in a glass, which to you would have seemed like just a few drops of water, was amounting to so much, and so much that there are people around the world who can actually consume this water to live, and do their daily chores for months. And so it didn't sit right with me, and I wanted to make a difference. And that's when I started visiting restaurants and trying to talk to them on ways in which they can help conserve water, and started sharing solutions with them. But unfortunately they didn't comply, because to them they didn't want to take advice from a teenager. And of course there was a lot of issues around not actually being able to match with their systems. So I had to take a step back and dwell deeper into the issue and understand the background of the industry and how you can impact it from in sitting at my position. And I realized that just simply asking them to change their behavior was not going to help, because they were a part of the hospitality industry, and for them serving water was a key metric of measuring their rating, etc. And that's when I came up, you reflected a lot, spoke to a lot of people. I would have personally visited more than 100 restaurants, and came back and reflected, and tried to understand how can we make a solution that's tangible and accessible to all. And that's when I came up with the idea of glass half full, where you fill the glass only half instead of filling it full. That way, people take just as much water as they need, they don't waste, and eventually are able to look at water with a more positive mindset. So that's sort of the idea with which that solution was built. Um, and from there, we started seeing it getting adopted in, a couple of restaurants in our locality. But I realized that it is important for this movement to scale, for there to be, a real significant and larger impact. And that's when I decided to write a petition to the National Restaurants Association of India, who are, which is an umbrella entity for the 5 lakh restaurants that exist in India. And it was the perfect target for me because I reached everyone that I needed to in one shot. And but it was obviously not that easy. Writing a petition is not simple, and actually getting people to sort of sign it, understand it, and finally taking that petition to your decision maker, which for me was the National Restaurants Association of India, was a whole other challenge. It took almost a year of petitioning and campaigning to reach them. I would have made them hundreds of calls and sent them so many emails, just trying to get them to become a part and understand that the concept was so simple that they can go on to save so much water in the process. And after almost a year of campaigning, I finally got a call with them, and it was a day before one of my semester final exams, but I took it anyways because I realized that spent too much time on this, and this is extremely valuable, and I can't give up hope at this point. And so went ahead, took the conversation, and after a couple of more interactions with them, they finally complied. And on World Water Day in 2019, which is 4 years after I started, we finally got that partnership and reached 5 lakh restaurants across the country, and were able to save over 10 million liters of water. So the journey from walking into one restaurant, trying to convince them to save water, getting rejected, to actually being able to reach 5 lakh restaurants was a phenomenal one. It was 4 years long, but I think it was worth the wait, because and worth the efforts, because honestly it was not just about reaching restaurants but also reaching people and changing mindsets. I remember having so many conversations with customers who would walk out of the restaurant after they have felt the impact of the glass half full, and they would say things like, we are now looking forward to going back home and thinking of the different ways in which we waste water on a daily basis. And that, I think, was one of the most powerful perspectives with which this movement and this concept really came up, because it was not just about saving that little bit water in restaurants, but it was about changing your mindset as a whole. And in the world of change making, that is one of the hardest things to do, because it's not a system that I'm just going to place that's going to function. It's about changing the way people think, changing the way that they've grown up, and changing the way that they believe. And so it was a tremendous challenge, but realizing the solution was so powerful that people were able to adopt it and make it their own is what made it widely acceptable. And that sort of built in us this belief that these are the kind of solutions that work, and these are the kind of solutions we need to take to the world. And from there we started taking this idea, and we were able to reach almost 8 countries with it, which was an amazing journey as well. But then unfortunately pandemic hit, so we didn't know what to do next, because restaurants closed down. So we put our heads together and we finally decided to publish our book that we had been working on for a long time. So our book is something like what you can call new age fables. We like to call it, we like to call it new age fables. It's called the Sustainability Stories. It's a collection of 13, um, you know, fables, something like you would have read in the Amar Chitra Kathas, where we talk about um, issues related to water, and we go on to translate that into the change maker or the scenario builder being the youngest character in the story, which allows youth or young people to think that they can be the change, and is really shaping their mindset from a very young age. So that is the goal with which the book was written and published. We published it with Pratham's Story Weaver, and Pratham is India's largest non-profit book publisher. And now we're working with UNICEF to build videos around it and actually, take it, give it a wider base. So again, a very, very interesting concept, taken, simplified, and given to people. And this really was derived from the idea that when I grew up, I've spent more time, um, our trips used to be in with nature, and I remember my parents have celebrated more of my birthdays in orphanages than actually having a party. I mean, I did have my fair share of parties, but there was also the empathetic side being built by working and spending time with nonprofits, and I think that was a really powerful experience for me, allowing me to understand the world better and become more part of it, and just learn ways in which I can help. And that is, I think, from where all of this stems. And so as the pandemic progressed, we started hearing more on the water crisis. In fact, there were so many reports that said that the third world war is going to be on water, and it is important for us to start conserving it. And especially because during the pandemic, hygiene became so important. Everyone was consuming more water than they actually needed. And so in that process, we were water was not being rationed, and we came across this report that said 2 billion people lacked the access to water in the middle of a global health crisis, which was moving and shocking, because it is impossible to think that we can even live without water in the normal course, rather a scenario when we're in a global health pandemic. And so I took a step back and thought about, what can we do about this? And I remember this very interesting story of Cape Town. So about 3 or 4 years ago, in the year 2017, Cape Town was said to be the first city in the world to run out of water, and it was shocking. So they had named day zero. They had listed that the end of July is going to be day zero. But here's a twist, right? Every month they started getting, pushed by a month. It went from 2000. It went from July to August to September, and at the end of it, we realized that day zero didn't exist at all, and it didn't exist because of the collective responsibility of citizens, because they were calculating the amount of water they were consuming and rationing it. So we built an app that allows you to calculate your water footprint, and in turn teaches you simple ways in which you can conserve water. And that has been another exciting journey. We launched it early this year, and people are very excited with the idea that they hold the solution in their hands, that they hold the power to change. And that's sort of the story of what the journey with why waste has been till today. And now we're focusing on building a world where every person understands the water crisis and is able to become a part of the solution, and is really being in the being a part of the process and really helping prevent us from reaching a third world war. And through this entire journey, I realized that it is so important for us to learn how to be a change maker and to be making a difference every single day, for us to really become a part of the problems that exist in our society. And as young people, we are growing up in a world of constant change, in a world where things are, unstable, where things um, are constantly in crisis. And so we grow up with a mindset where we're constantly also thinking of ways to improve it. And that's what gives us power as young. The power is young people to really go out and make that difference. And so I think that is what the power of being a young change maker is the ability to understand problems and solutions better than most adults can today. So to, very derived from that very concept, I started visiting schools and sharing stories of other young change makers who are just the same as us, who've seen a problem around us and around them and decided to go ahead and make a difference and really solve it and change the way that their community and their society is functioning. And these powerful stories were instigating and building more youth communities who were understanding problems around them and were now moved to want to make a difference because they realize that it is possible. And most often, the reason we don't do things is because we think it's not possible to do it. But all of us have those solutions and all of us have the capacity to make a difference. We just need to take that first step and show that resilience along the path till we actually reach the change that we want to make and change that we want to see. And I think the power of coming together as young people is insurmountable. I mean, we've seen it with the climate strike movements. We've seen it with in so many other occasions without even realizing the power that we've had as young people in raising our voices to impact change. And the beautiful thing about us coming together is that our voices only amplify. So if one person's voice, if Greta was able to turn the world upside down all by herself, then it looks to me that if all the youth come together, they can really turn the world the right side up. And that is the power of our voices coming together. And that's what every young person and every young change maker is trying to build as an impact and as a community. So, I want to sort of wrap up here and take any questions that you guys might have or anything that you want me to sort of touch upon and share. Very, very happy to.
Cool. I've enabled the chat for everyone, so you guys can just hop in and ask the questions. Anmol Wadhwa has asked, is sustainable development something that is really taken care of? I think it has become a cliche. I remember my 10th, I used this term in my paper and got full marks, but I don't see places where sustainable development is really used. Please enlighten me on this.
Yeah. See, I think the idea behind sustainable development today is not yet being embraced in the way that it should be, right? Sustainability and sustainable development is really all about bringing together communities. It's not just about one person or saving one resource, but it is about looking at problems more holistically and ensuring that when we grow or when we try to progress as a community, we are looking at all of the problems around us and not just trying to think of one or two. Now, the issue today around sustainable development is that we pause being happy with just one or two things having been improved, which is great, which is important as well. But sustainability means the entire community lives as a whole, and it's not just nature and it's not just us and nature, but it's also us with our own communities, with animals, with everything that is around us. And I think there is still a lack of ability to converge all of these domains. And if I have to really talk about a very interesting perspective on this, right? Sustainable development. If we think about something which a lot of people don't think about, which is sustainability in businesses. And I think I just see another question. Why can't business tycoons search alternatives to make products? Um, and I like the use of why waste 2,000 liters of water. But I actually want to combine these two questions, right? And I think it is important to realize that the environment is the economy, right? Today, everything that we own in the economy has been derived from the environment. And what businesses or for profit driven companies lack to see is that they need to be growing and building in a sustainable way that is complementing the environment and not just extracting from it. We still are living a parasitic existence. We are not living symbiotic existence how we should be. And really, it is the task of us as young people to demand what we want tomorrow. If you stop buying jeans or you create a way to make jeans with much lesser water, obviously people are going to come to you. Unfortunately, economics today runs in such a way that the cheapest way of making it is going to give me the cheapest cost price and then the cheapest selling price, and so I'm going to make the maximum profits. But we always forget the impact on the environment. So if we start to grow up as conscious consumers, we will be able to transform the way that these communities are thinking and building. And in fact, we need to become a part of these communities and think and build more innovatively, because their their ideas and their capabilities are probably saturated, which is why we don't see as much development. But I must note that there are a lot of businesses and a lot of communities and companies that are trying to build more sustainably, that are trying to come up with goods and processes that are more sustainable. And there's one of them that you all must check out. I can, try and share a list of them with the Bluelearn team. They can forward it to you. But it is really also based a lot on choices that we make on a daily basis, and what we really want for ourselves, as for the greater good. To start realizing that we need to live with the environment and not just, live in the as independent entities, is something that we need to realize and come together as a youth community and demand the change that you want from the people that you need. Just last week, I was a part of a discussion with Unilever, which is excitingly one of the largest communities, and similarly have had the opportunity to speak with many different organizations at that level and learn of the kind of transformations or changes that they are trying to bring into their manufacturing processes in order to make them more sustainable. The only issue is that unfortunately we have come so far and so deep into all of these that to even transform the entire system is going to take a long time. But the best that we can do as consumers is to start changing the way that we are behaving and changing our mindsets and that of those around us to really be able to see more tangible impact. So I hope this sort of helped. Wow, there's a lot of questions I've just
should I pick one? I just saw a good question.
Yeah, I think it's best if you pick questions for me.
Someone has asked, how did you earn from helping and making people aware of mishandling of water? Did you earn anything?
What do you mean by
in terms of money? Not
no. There's nothing to earn when you're working in the social sector. I think what you're earning is for the greater good. You're earning change and you're earning impact. And till the time that is sustainable, I think there's really nothing else you need because the reason you start trying to build a change is to see that change and nothing else. And if you're asking as to how we function as an organization, then that would be through receiving grants from other organizations or through some kind of funding. But of course, you are completely liable on telling them where you've spent all of these funds and the impact that has come out of it. So that's sort of there's very interesting organizations who give funds most recently we've received a grant from the Sean Mendes Foundation. So
Sorry, from
very,
where?
very sorry,
From where?
the Sean Mendes Foundation.
Whoa, that's cool.
So there are a lot of organizations like this around the world who are excited to help young people and who are excited to sort of give you the support that you need. You just need to show them, that you are excited about the change that you want to bring and are resilient enough to see it through. I think that is sort of how you would, see the impact.
Yep. Krish Gone has asked, I myself have talked about environmental concerns with my school friends, but they called me stupid and nerd and said it's never possible. What do I do with these people now? How do I persuade them?
Um, that's a very interesting question because I was treated the same way by a lot of people in school. But I think the key is to find your tribe, right? I find it hard to believe that there's absolutely no one who supports you. I think there should definitely be someone or some people who support you and use them to start building your community.
Sorry, I accidentally muted you.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So so what I was saying is I think there's always someone out there who is going to be thinking like you. I think that it's impossible, at least in today's day and age, to find even one person in your community who might not be as they might not be as inclined towards environmental issues or solving environmental issues, but I'm sure they would have some inclination to wanting to be protective of the environment. And I think people like that and use them to start building a community. Continue to advocate for the change that you want to. Don't stop. I remember in school, a lot of my friends used to come and tell me things like, why are you wasting your time with my waste? But I think I knew the power of what was being built and what was being created. In fact, another interesting story is that I had received scholarships to study abroad, but decided to stay back here because I wanted to continue to save water. And a lot of people didn't understand that rationale at all. And that was almost now 4 years ago. And obviously, at that point, we didn't have as much impact. We didn't have a grant from the Sean Mendes Foundation or the Forbes under 30. But I think at that point, to have believed that impact can happen and change can happen, and taking that decision for which was looking beyond myself but at the greater good was a very powerful one. It was difficult, no doubt, but just realizing that these are the kind of decisions that help make this world a better place to live in, and that help your communities grow and become better spaces is what you need to do. So don't get disheartened if people around you don't believe in you or are shunning you off, because that's what's happened to all of us. That's how we've all come here. I think it's always to remember that what you're doing is right, and you need to continue to believe in it, and believe in it so hard that those who don't believe in it at all start believing in it and go and make an impact so large that they have no choice but to realize that what you were doing was powerful. So and of course becoming a part of it. So yeah, I think that's what I would say for that.
Yeah. Sid has asked, what are the exact changes that you make in the restaurant that could spark a thought in people to conserve water, apart from that half a glass initiative?
That's a very good question. So we would basically go to restaurants and tell them that, in the beginning, we would tell them things like, can you just, serve as much water as customers ask for? Can you ask them if they want more water? Those were things that they couldn't comply with because of hospitality issues. So what they started doing was the waiters would go and only pour half a glass of water. And what we were doing parallelly was we were placing tent cards in some of these restaurants. So these tent cards were typically like your small placards that you see on a table in a restaurant. Some of them have advertising, some of them have menus. We would talk about glass half full and the impact that you would have if you became a water warrior or just became someone who is conserving water in their daily lives, which is consuming just as much water as you need and not wasting. And in that process, we were able to changed the way people were thinking about water. It would strike a conversation between the waiters and the customers because they would see the glass half full placard and then they would see their glasses being poured with only half a glass of water. And they were excited to learn more. They were concerned to learn more and they were moved to make an impact. And so that is how, we work with restaurants. Now, of course, there were still some people who would unfortunately leave water behind. So restaurants that we were working with started collecting this water and using it for activities like gardening or sweeping. And inside the kitchens, in all of the sinks, we installed aerators, which are basically water flow meters. They reduce the flow of water, and we also optimize the dishwashing process with them using certain technologies. So it was looking at it from a very, very holistic point of view. How can we optimize the consumption of water across the restaurant? Of course, glass half full was the entry point and the customers primarily saw, but when we worked with them, we looked at a very holistic way of conserving water.
Yep. There's one question which says, what is your age, Garvita? You've achieved a lot. And there's another one. Hey, Garvita, what is your thoughts on making aware farmers who are using conventional ways to irrigate farms? Were we losing tons of water? And how are we doing? How are we moving ahead with this?
That's a very that's a very interesting question too. So my age is 21, and Y Waste is now 6 years old. So Y Waste turned 6 just last weekend. So very excited to share that. Now, coming back to the other question, I want to request you to sort of repeat it because it was a very interesting one.
Yeah, basically, your thoughts on farmers.
I find it. Okay. Thoughts on making aware farmers who were using conventional ways to irrigate farms, were losing tons of water, and how we and the government together do so. I think so. One thing we can do, sitting in our positions, right? Today, there's a lot of solutions around this. That have been pioneered in specific areas. There are a lot of agri-tech startups that are providing powerful solutions to issues like this, making crops more, water resilient, making soil more water resistant. Water. I'm losing the right word, but basically soil that captures water more easily and stores it for a longer time. So there are solutions like this that are being built. However, they're not being able to reach the right people as fast as required. And secondly, of course, our agricultural population is also so high that to reach all of them is difficult. So what we would need is strict laws on behalf of the government. And as young people, what we can do is mobilize them to come up with those laws, write petitions, write emails to governments, talk to them to, build that just sort of change and start with your community, start with the village in your home, show the impact there. I think when I think of how we started, we showed the impact of 1 restaurant, 2 restaurants, 3 restaurants, and that's when 5 lakh restaurants agreed to become a part of us. So go out there, find a community near your home where you are, build a community of people with you, and take them and get this sort of moving, get them to do it, and use that as a case study to get this to more cities and more, not cities, but more communities and more farmers across the country. There are a lot of organizations who are working on very powerful solutions to help these farmers. You can check them out. There's Biome, there's water.org, there is WaterAid India, a lot of organizations, not just for farmers, but a lot of different sectors with regards to water, including the ones that I named. And I think it is fabulous to learn from the way these people have taken local solutions and globalized it. How they took a solution in one area, how they pioneered it in that one place, and then they use that as an example to sort of magnify impact. I think that is the power of build local, think global. And I think that's sort of what my thoughts would be on this is, it's true. What you've said is absolutely true. But action is being taken and more action can be taken. You can be a part of that change.
Yeah. Rahul Gupta has asked, what role do you think the governments and local bodies play, or what do they need to play in order to conserve water?
So it's a very two-way sort of traffic, right? What I have personally more deeply looked into is individual impact and community impact. Um, Governments and local bodies do play key roles in anything because they are the ones who look at our communities and are supposed to be taking care of our localities, right? And there are very interesting laws in place, but a lot of them are outdated, unfortunately. What we need to see is from these larger communities is there being more holistic ways of distribution of water. Today we see there is a lot of gap between the way water is being shared and being consumed, right? And more than anything, and more than these government bodies acting, there can be thousands of laws in place, but till the time we don't start consuming as much water as we need, till the time we don't stop taking showers and start taking bucket baths, as many laws as they put in, it's not going to make any difference because we are still consuming water the same way as we were before. And I think that's sort of where starting for each of us would make a lot more sense. And then obviously, you look at the bigger picture, larger perspective. There's so much that can be done. There's so much that needs to be done. There's so much that is being done. So yeah, very, very sort of basic answer.
Do you think something can be done with these yearly floods that hit our states, and can it help our groundwater level?
Yes. Okay. I love this question. So first of all, why are floods being hit in places that earlier were never being impacted by floods? First question. Second question, how can we prevent these floods, right? I want to talk about both. Now, why are these floods hitting us is because we've concretized ground. Naturally, water is meant to seep directly into the ground and, of course, join the water cycle. Now, what is happening is because we've concretized roads, we've built buildings, we've concretized the ground with roads, we've built buildings, we've paved our paths. There's no way for water to seep back in. Moreover, drains are over flooding. They're not being, cleared properly. They're not being discharged, in the right manner. And so, because of that clogging, there is flooding that's happening. In fact, my own home was flooded 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. I think in the year 2017, sometime in August. And I've seen and I've felt the impact of it firsthand. I was literally sleeping on my bed, and then the house was full of water before we even realized it, and it was hella scary. I didn't think we would come out of it at all, but we did. It took almost 3-4 days, but we finally did, and it was an insane situation. And to think that there are people who live life like that, it hurts, because just realizing how hard those 3 to 4 days were makes it even harder to think how it might have been for someone who is living regularly like this. And it is because of our ways, it's because we have destroyed the natural ecosystem and the natural way of things working. Now, what can be done to prevent this, right? One, rainwater harvesting, collecting as much water as we can, creating recharge wells and discharge wells in within the cities, within your homes, where water is seeping back into the ground, where it has space to seep back into the ground and it is not logged. And there was a very interesting solution that I was studying a while back, and I would sort of encourage all of you to go and look into it. It's called pervious cement. So this is basically cement that has holes in it. It's also called, and a lot of cities that have been able to adopt it are today called sponge cities, because they're basically sucking all of the water back into themselves, into the grounds, into where they are. And it's a very interesting concept, because it solves the purpose of us concretizing grounds and not letting it be soil anymore. But unfortunately, in cities and countries nearer to the equator, what is happening is that this water ends up evaporating before it can even go back into the ground. And that's why it's not one of the most effective solutions in a lot of cities in India, especially in the summer seasons. But it's a very powerful solution if engineered well enough, can actually make a huge impact to our cities and helping groundwater seep back in. Maybe that's something you guys can take back to think about and really implement, and then come back to me and talk about the impact of it. Or, more than happy to study it with you. But I think the idea behind trying our best to prevent these yearly floods is to find ways to send water back into the ground by building those sort of commodities and machines. I wouldn't say machines, I would rather say building those structures, or just digging a hole in the ground that allows water to seep back in, building recharge wells, anything that allows water to go back into where it naturally is supposed to be would be the ideal way to prevent issues like this at the moment, at least, because obviously we can't destroy all of the buildings that we live in. But this is sort of the simplest way to probably start.
Yep.
Yeah.
Another question that has come kind of off topic, but it is, how did you learn to do or manage all this at a young age? A lot of us probably notice a bunch of problems around us, but we don't know how to start solving it. So what would be your advice to solve an arbitrary problem, or at least start solving it?
So I see two questions here, and correct me if I'm wrong. One is, how do you sort of manage things at a young age?
Yeah, sort of.
And second was, how do you solve arbitrary problems? Any examples around arbitrary problems, or just arbitrary problems?
The basic thing is that we, as well, like people like me and everyone else on the chat, we see a lot of problems as well, right? Garbage, be it air pollution, be it anything. So how do we start solving such problems? Just like you picked up a problem and started solving it.
Yeah, I think it's simple. Just start. I think there's always a very simple way to start. I just walked into a restaurant and asked them to start saving water, and obviously the first visit was not fruitful at all. I got shunned away, saying we don't want advice from a teenager. We can't apply all of the solutions you're saying. It took me almost a year to actually reach the right solution, but it was because I was deeply impacted by the problem that I saw, and I was hell bent on solving it. And I would spend every extra minute that I had to actually being able to solve it. I've gone through the very typical high school process, attending coaching classes and also attending school at the same time. And so every free minute that I would find over a weekend, I would sit and work on this. And I think that's sort of how you develop it, right? Realizing that if you want to do this, if you want to build this change, if you want to make a difference, you have to give it that sort of time commitment that it needs. You need to sort of give up on some things that you would have done and instead work on this. So that's just a very simple way of looking at it, and realizing that you can make an impact if you just choose, what it is that you want to do. And second, really coming up with a solution is all about trial and error. You're going to fail 1,000 times, but that's only because there's a much much more impactful, much more powerful way of doing it, and that solution lies within you. You just need to find it, and you find it by experimenting with it. By experimenting and talking to people, understanding the problem better, realizing that it's not end game. If you didn't get it the first time, you can keep trying till you actually do. So yeah, that would sort of be my thought on that. Did I miss anything?
No, I guess that is pretty much it.
I see a question. Weren't you scared to start at such a young age? Of course, I was scared. But I mean, I remember the first time I walked into a restaurant, I was so nervous, and I was like, should I even do this? And of course, it was worse because they threw me out. But now I get to laugh about it. But I think I was hella scared. I was scared writing a petition to a national organization. I was a 17-year-old who was, asking them to change the way that they saw. And I thought to myself, why would they even listen to me? But then I realized I had a great idea and it was creating impact. So I shouldn't be afraid. I used to be someone who used to be afraid of approaching people. But when you realize that the worst thing that can actually happen is that they say no, and there is nothing else, right? You're not scared to do it anymore, because now you know that the worst thing that they can say is no, and that doesn't matter. But the best thing that can actually happen is they listen to you. They might give you advice. They might actually, come on board with you. that's the power. So I have, this with a lot of course experimenting and learning through these last 6 years, realize that if you try, how many other things you try, right? 1% of the things that you try are probably going to succeed. So if you try 100 things, you succeed at one thing. I'm sure my percentage is very low. It's not that bad. But just to give it as like an example, like let's say you try, okay, let's make it 10%. So you try 100 things, 10 things work out. But if you try 1,000 things, 100 things are going to work out. And 100 things working out is obviously better than 10 things. And people aren't going to see those extra 900 things that you tried, but they would, and those 900 things won't have that impact, but the 100 things that you do would have a much larger impact than just the 10 things that you would do. And that's the 10 things because you just tried 100 times. So try as hard as you can, keep trying, keep reaching out to people. There's no dearth of people on this planet who can help you and who can support you in your endeavors. So I think going out there, not being afraid, and realizing that there's really nothing that can go wrong is sort of the key. And it, not gonna lie, it didn't come that easy. It took me a while, but I think it happened. Someone quoted Steve Jobs, and I love that. It's one of my favorite quotes.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask, how much more time do you have so that I can choose the questions?
I have like a hard stop at 8:30.
Oh, cool. So let's do this for 5 minutes and then we can wrap it up.
Yeah, sure.
Number one question is about funding. How do you get funding for such projects? Or
to get funding, there's a lot of different ways in which you can go about it. Nowadays, there's a lot of organizations that provide grants to young people. So there's, for example, Global Change Makers, there's change.org, there's One Young World. So many people who are excited to support young people in their process of change, and not just in terms of monetary funds, but also in terms of supporting you with running your nonprofit. There's a lot of things that go into it. It's not just going out there trying to make a difference, but there's a lot of back end work that also goes on, and it's very similar to how you would set up a startup. The only difference I would think of is the liability of not making profits, but you still have that need to, and constant excitement to make an impact. So that's sort of the only difference I would say. And so there are a lot of these organizations today across the globe who are supporting young people, who are helping them, come up, not only giving them the funds, but actually helping them from scratch, from coming up with the idea to going ahead and actually implementing it out there in the world. And I think these are tremendously powerful spaces to become a part of. And of course, to become a part of them, you need to write an application. You need to go through the entire process of it. It's like applying to anything that you usually would. And yeah, same theory, apply to 100 places, get into at least 10. So that's sort of how I would say. I think the goal would be to find organizations who align with what you want to do, right? There's so many things you can make a difference for. Find organizations and nonprofits who are working on similar lines as you are, who are, kind of trying to support change makers who want to make the kind of change that you're doing today, or you want to make, and find them and approach them, reach out to them, talk to them. Very, very, I think nonprofits are one of the most approachable communities. Reach out to them. In fact, I think now the world has become a lot more approachable. So I think that would become a redundant statement. But yeah, I think just don't be afraid to drop them an email and understand how they can support you. And maybe they might not support you in a monetary way to start off with. But there's a very beautiful concept in the world of nonprofits, which is called zero budget projects. So a lot of projects that we try to implement today are zero budget. And we try to ensure that we are using and consuming as less funds as we possibly can, because we don't get that much funding, to be very honest. It's not at the level of startups, especially the way that we're seeing today at all. It's very, very minimal, which, help you take care of the bare minimum logistical costs. but looking more at projects that are zero budget, that do not require as much money, but require more manpower and require more effort from you as a person, is, I think, the kind of the key to building the right nonprofit ideas.
Cool. Let's take one last question. How can people join you or your
Oh, how can
organization?
people join us? Yeah, very simple. Just write an email to us on contact@ywaste.io, or reach out to us on social media at ywaste.org, and someone will respond to you. Please do share what you're most excited to do with us. What excites you the most, and which part of our organization would you be most excited to work on? And we can sort of help you find a place if we find something very interesting that you can do with us. So yeah.
Totally works. I've included not all of just a LinkedIn link in every announcement that I've done on Discord and on WhatsApp as well. So check it out over there. DM her if you don't DM her, as she said, DM Byways, and then you can go ahead with whatever it is.
I will try to reply to as many DMs as I can.
Yeah, sure. So should we end it now?
Yeah. I think it's been quite fun. The questions are very interesting, and a lot of engagement and interaction, which was pretty fun to look at. So thanks, guys, for lots of positive comments. Thank you for that. And hope some of you guys actually collaborate together and work towards building some sort of change. And just remember, there are a ton of communities in the world to support you. And this is something that I say all the time: change is the only constant, but now the world is in the constant need for change makers like you and I. And honestly, you could be doing anything. You could be a professional, but you can be a change maker. You can be impacting the world, no matter what your job is, in a small way, in a large way, through your community, through your locality, in a global manner, in your home. There's always some way in which you can make an impact. So don't hesitate. Don't feel like you can't do it. Everyone can do it. Change starts alone, but change happens together. So till the time you don't start, you're not going to make it happen. And so go for it. And thanks, guys, for being so fun and positive. I had a really cool evening.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming. That was really good closing words. So on that note, let's end it. Once again, thanks for coming. Goodbye.
Thanks, guys, for having me.
Oh, by the way, I've posted the Bywaste website link in the chat.
Yes.
So you guys can go over there, support them, check out the website. And
absolutely.
Yeah.